there are some studios that do things traditionally like we always expect, where it's frame by frame. Everybody's just, they got their character model sheets, they look at them, they're like, okay, well, I got to draw this however it's rotated, and you get your keys, and there's different departments that do all these drawings. And in a lot of cases like that, and in some studios, I think Titmouse and some other places as well, they do their effects as well. And when I say effects, of course, effects is all the, from my perspective, the fun stuff, which is anything that's really not character-based that needs to be animated quite often. And different studios, obviously different different countries, I guess, and different locales will deal with it differently. But, in Toronto, where, I've always worked, and sometimes, and I think Ottawa, where the other Jamfilled studio is, and a lot of them sort of work, effects basically handles anything that still really needs to be traditionally done. So done frame by frame, because that's the skill set we have, and a lot of that stuff isn't character-based, and our skill set is good at drawing things that aren't characters, things that behave differently. So all the elements, fire, water, mud, slime, goo, rocket jets, all the great stuff. And of course it varies from genre to genre. Toronto's really big for a lot of kid shows. Like, we really grew up with we started up with Nirvana, and we did like Care Bears, we did Maximum Review, we did all the like really, traditional children's stuff. So you've got this whole skill set, or talent pool, I should say, of people that are used to doing that. And I really spent, I think, 8 years of my career just doing, like, Keeping the Big Wide World, Wild Kratts, Nunchucks, Camp Lake Bottom, like a lot of those like young children stuff, Wibbly Pig, all the really like, and the toddler stuff as well, because that's the bread and butter for Toronto. So a lot of the effects are unfortunately very similar. Little dust poofs, little campfires, little candles, water splashes, waves and stuff like that, puddles, a lot of the basic stuff. And honestly, it got quite boring after a while. So I was very happy to kind of move on after a bit. And I ended up working on, I did leave, I went to Jam a long time ago, and I actually ended up working on this 3D kid show called Cody Kapow, and it was kind of a chance to get into something interesting, but it was still like a lot of kid stuff, but at least it was like fantasy martial arts stuff. So I would do like magical dragon aura stuff, and little bits of magic flair and stuff like that. So it was neat. It really expands your imagination, and it gives me a chance to do a lot of design as well, which is nice. But all that aside, the process, of course, for us is very different, because instead of having, traditional animators that will do the characters and then sometimes the effects as well, we get the shots with the animation complete. So we'll get, a shot like, like this, and animation's already done their job. Backgrounds are already in it, hopefully. Season 2, we had issues where the backgrounds were actually behind schedule, and we actually had to do stuff. Yeah, it's chugging really bad. Come on, flip over. Oh, no, wait, it's my fault. So, yeah, we'll get this, and it's already done. So in a case like this, if you can see my screen, we got that episode 5 bit where they go in and Slug tries to eat everybody, which is awesome. And, my process as a supervisor was to go through, watch the entire Leica, and when I say Leica, that's basically the storyboards, put to time, voice, and audio cues so that the animators have something to work by. So the Leicas, quite often, depending on how well they're done and who's doing the storyboards, will include effects as well. And based on what I've seen and what my prior knowledge is, I'll determine what shots need, to be touched by what. So I'll make a huge breakdown, and I will say, okay, sequence 1, shot 10 needs drool, so to shot 11, 12, and I'll make this huge list. And some shows, sometimes it's like 70 shots. Some shows it's like 300 shots. And so our team size will depend on that. Final Space is one of the bigger effects heavy shows I've ever worked on, and we've had a team of about 6 to 7 people. I think first season was actually 8 people, and I hopped on as well, 8.5, like 9 people, just pumping this stuff out because there's so many shots, and some of the shots just take a long time. Really, in order to cut that down, we also have a system for reuse, and animators do that a lot as well. Any animation that might as well be duplicated, we duplicate it, because you got to do that. There's no way you're going to get stuff done in the pacing that we need to be getting stuff done without doing that, that kind of trick. I mean, when we talk about Final Space, if you guys haven't heard this from anybody else, our process on our end, so the Canada, the Toronto studios end, and this is really typical schedule for almost all the shows that I've ever worked on. It's a 2-week schedule. So each department has roughly 2 weeks to complete a whole episode. So backgrounds will do theirs, and then, animation might slip in, and then effects, and then compositing. And we all do it staggered so that the work is done ahead of time. So, of course, when you spread that out, it's over the course of like a year to do the whole thing. But we basically, the effects department has 2 weeks, and 2 weeks alone to do, an entire episode's worth of effects. And you have to understand that some of these take 3 or 4 days, to do. I had a really, really complex shot that I was working on last week that I can only tell you so much about, but it's a character getting really distorted and pulled like taffy, and I really went body horror with it, but that took me 3 days to do. I mean, 3 days, about 14 hours a day. So, if we've got 150 to 200 shots and there's 7 of us, not everybody can be doing that kind of pacing on every single shot. So with that in mind, we have, and I think I can kind of show you here, and this is just kind of a basic example. Harmony has a system, a reuse system, and we actually keep all the different little bits sorted so that when we can, we'll actually just drop these in. So I've got stuff for Ash, I've got blasts, debris, dust, electricity, all this stuff, explosions, because explosions take a long time to do quite often, especially for the big ones. So, I got a bunch of different electricity, and I can grab these, and it's probably too small to see, but they'll usually do a little preview for me. And I literally just take these, I drag them, I drop them onto my screen, and connect them in this big system of nodes. And I'm not really going to teach you guys Harmony right now because that's just silly, and who needs that? But we've got this modern kind of non-linear system for handling everything. So in here, I've got displays, I've got groups of things. No, don't do that. Backgrounds in one slot, characters in another, effects in another. And there's all kinds of different ways that we can handle all of this. So, what?
You don't look good talking in the tech.
Oh, no, I don't. If anybody's...
I don't think they've actually...
Okay. I don't have enough room in my window for everything, so I'm not really seeing any text if anybody's asking questions. And with that, I don't know if anybody can just interrupt me if they have questions, because I'm just going to ramble forever. Literally forever. But just jumping around, in a case like this, just to show you, so we'd get this shot, and it wouldn't have the goober already in here, but since I can't show you Season 3 stuff, I had to grab something from Season 2. So we got the Zargon slug, and this is the super complicated puppet system. So, and we weren't going to talk about this because of effects, but just so that you know, each of these little, I don't know what color that is, blue? Each of those represents a drawing. So if you have a character, each little bit, finger, the hand, the torso, these are all designed and drawn in little bits and pieces. So one person, usually ShadowMachine in LA, will send us the whole character designed as one drawing. And then we have a whole department that will take that and it will break it down into bits and pieces and build a paper puppet out of it that they can animate. So, bonus with that for us is that other than this being stupid, huge, and complicated, you can actually attach things to each of these drawings. These drawings have these pegs, which are position information, and then the drawings, which are well, the artwork, right? So I can actually go in here, and what we ended up doing for, you know, in this particular case, the slug with the goo, is we actually made these drawings as animated cycles that are independent of each other. Everything's going really slow, but it's going. And so I can go into just the drawings. So we got these, and they droop and they dribble, and they go in what's called a cycle. So they and Harmony now supports like 3D as well. You can import 3D objects, but we're not going to get into that. So yeah, this is basically, it's what's called the network, and it allows you to sort everything, group everything, attach things, and you know, non-linearly edit stuff. Where a lot of what I do doesn't deal with that too much. That's usually just where I connect and attach stuff. But I do a lot of mainly just drawing, like I said at the start, because we do a lot of, you know, almost traditional animation. We're just doing a lot of like frame by frame drawing. You know, I'm dealing mainly with just dropping in drawings and then, you know, attaching them to the rigs or the characters and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm gonna open up ideally a lighter shot.
That's cool. Thank you. I always saw that stuff when like animators would post their previews on like Twitter or something, and I just never understood what it was for. Yeah,
every country is a little different because everybody's kind of got a piece of software that they're really comfortable using, and it becomes kind of the standard amongst studios. Harmony, if I'm not wrong, was developed in Canada, and for a short while, if not still, it's owned by Chorus, which is a Canadian media company as well. And it was originally designed for cleaning up traditional animation. So it's got all this software for scanning, you know, cells and scanning, all that stuff, and digitally going in and doing the line work and digitally painting it. And now it's to the point where it's a very powerful 2D animation tool. And I find that it's becoming really common in the US as well. And I'm not sure about Europe. I know that like Japan has a lot of software they're using on their own, and they do a lot of stuff still traditionally. And you know, everybody's a little bit different.
I get it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Let's see. Oh, I got one with an unfinished background, which is kind of fun to look at. If I can find it. And of course, the nice thing with this over, say, Flash, and I keep going back to Flash, hoping that anybody here remembers Flash, but Flash is very standalone, so everybody has a very small single file, and that would be all your shot and all your animation, and you'd work on it, and then you'd pass it on to another department or whomever. But Harmony is much, much bigger, and it actually works off a server similar to Maya, so the upside is everybody in your studio can have access to the same file at the same time, or ideally no two people are working on it at the same time, and we'll lock that out, but you don't have to pass it off your computer onto somebody else's computer. They can just log in and grab that shot when you're done with it. This will take a second, so I'll just sit here. I was so tempted to just continue working with what I was working on today, but I know I can't do that, so. Yeah, part of me is like, oh, you gotta see this, but then part of me is like, you don't want to know. And this is going to be a good season. It's going to be really good.
Oh, I'm so excited.
It's got everything. It'll be heartbreaking, but it's also going to be really, really cool. But I mean, that's the good stuff. It's got a lot of personality, a lot of heart. It's got a lot of fun, cool stuff in it. It's definitely you know, the jump from season 1 to 2. I feel like it's a similar jump. It's just getting deeper. And of course, The only thing that is holding us back is quarantine, because pretty much our entire studio has been working remotely since Final Spaces started, so we're all on our own computers trying to get this done as best we can. Forever. Good question. It does vary. Lately, the one thing that I've had a lot of fun with, especially this season, is a lot of like, I mean, I want to call it body horror, but a lot of like the really distorting. There was a scene in the space baby stuff was great, and which is less of an effect, but it is in this particular case because once again, as I said before, it's like it has to be done traditionally. It has to be morphing and stuff like that. But there was a shot, and I forget what episode, where the dude in the bar, the Tribar, goes and recruits. He pulls his own arm off, and then his arm grows back, and stuff like that is just awesome. I spent the night just digging through some Akira reference and keying it out, and I ended up passing it off to one of my team members. But that stuff is great. I get to do a lot more this season. Explosions are a ton of fun, and this show is good for them. And I do like electricity. It's a good one. Electricity is fun because quite often you don't have to spend a lot of time on it, which means you can get like that real instant gratification. It's very quick to find or to see how the results are. So let's see if this will show. Okay, again. Yeah, so we can, this one, if I'm not wrong, yeah. So this didn't have a completed background. So this is a real quick shot, but you can see, if we remember this bit, and they got the hover bike and they're going through the hallways, and the hallways were done in 3D afterwards. So all we had was this like placeholder bit. And this is a nice example. This is kind of something that I thought you guys might like to see, because this kind of really just shows the power. The one thing that really makes this show what it is the compositing team. And compositing, nobody really ever thinks about them in 2D very much. Not a lot of people know what they do, but we have a full team of compositors that worked with us and actually worked when Jam bought the studio. We used to be known as ARC, and ARC did some feature film stuff. And so with 3D, there's a lot you do. You do color correction, you do lighting, you do glows, and all this really nice stuff. And I worked hand in hand quite a bit in the last season with the compositors who I worked with on previous shows. And it was really about this, this tied together knowledge between you and them about what do you need to provide them to make it look really good. So in the case of sparks and stuff, I went in and we drew, this frenetic sequence, these really flary looking sparks that are just shooting out as they're scratching against the walls. And in and of itself, the motions there, nothing about this looks that dramatically nice. Like it's a fairly flat color, and without any glow or any real light coming off of it, it's nothing special. But this is one of those shots where you pass it off to our compositors, which was actually ShadowMachine during season 1, and then we took over in season 2 and now season 3. And they will take that, they will use that as a basis for lighting to splash it up against the characters. They'll glow it out and give it a nice bright burn so that it looks, fairly realistic and ties it all together. And that's the big key here, is that, the compositors will really make a 2D show look that much more solid by adjusting the lighting. So say the characters are lit to match the background lighting, and we got a lot of that in Final Space, because they might be in like red alert, and there's red lights all over the ship, and they're they got that flashing on them, or maybe it's in a moonlit planet, and you want that different tone versus say like a brightly lit area. But yeah, this is really, really basic stuff. And this would be the kind of thing where, yeah, we just go in and let's see. Yeah, we just go in and we'd go nuts on this. With Harmony, let's see. I don't know if I can isolate this and show you. Just going to get rid of it. So I might be able to actually get away with kind of like doing this from scratch a little bit to kind of show you. The other nice thing about between this and Flash, there was maybe one person here that actually knows Flash, is that this uses a color palette system, which is nice. So we actually have a set of colors for, you know, all the characters and stuff. And that way, unlike Flash, you don't have like a million different variations, or you don't have to make a new color every time. You set your set of colors, and you can just always access them. Of course, then again, just I say that and I went and lost it. Jeez. Oh, it's because it shouldn't be there. That's why. So yeah, and I mean, those like Josh that really likes using vector drawing, like Illustrator and stuff like that. When we draw, not we, but when the characters department draws characters and props, so like guns and stuff, they'll do stuff using vector line, and that makes the most sense for them. Effects is a very fluid thing, and I always teach and always get my team to make sure that they use a brush. And although Harmony system is still technically a vector brush, it's very fluid. You can have a lot of control as to your thin and thick, which is a huge thing. So I might want to really reduce it so that I can come to a fine point. Let's see. And I mean, that's, but I can really have nice, very thin lines. So if I want to do something, I can just, and then, of course, it's not reacting super nice right now. And then my process quite a bit, and I don't know if this is good or bad because I kind of very, very self-taught, especially with a lot of the drawing and stuff. I've been drawing in Harmony so long that I'll basically go in, a lot of times I'll do a fat line, and then I'll just go in and thin it out or adjust it. So just go in with an eraser. And of course, you can't see my setup here, but and everybody's kind of unique, and they always want what's a more comfortable setup. And for me, for drawing, I've got, if I can show you, I use a keypad, and I have all my short keys on that, and that makes it a very quick process because we're always trying to kind of find the quickest way to do things and or efficient way to do things. So I've got my eraser, brush, fill, all that stuff, so I don't have to move my hand, and I don't have to take my stylus off my Cintiq in order to touch any other keys on my keyboard. I'll only take my hands off, type if I need to rename something or do something that isn't loaded on my keypad, but my keypad does, you know, everything's loaded up for that. So nice and quick. And then yeah, I'll just like go in if I was going to do sparks. Just kind of follow the flow of things. So like in this particular case, it was we wanted to kind of have that exaggerated, the sparks are flying off so quick that they're almost trails rather than just individual sparks. So I'm going to just go in and every frame in this particular case. And of course, like I think most all animation software, you have to have an onion skinning system. So that'll show me, you know, my previous drawing when I'm on my next frame. So I'm going to draw it. I want to make sure, okay, if I want this one to be slightly above that last one, that way I can do that. Of course, this is working a little bit nicer because I'm not showing anything on my screen. But yeah. Oops. And of course, you know, if anybody has questions, just shoot. Go right ahead. I don't have a huge plan for now. I'm just kind of just going at it.
I have a question from Miss CCP, and she asks, are all of the shots for characters in Final Space puppet animation and the special effects animation done like traditionally? I'm going to assume like frame by frame.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. There are a few exceptions to that. It's very rare, but like we've got a shot coming up where somebody morphs from one thing to another, and sometimes you can do that with puppet animation. Some of the puppet animators on the show they're really good, and they make a lot of that stuff look fairly traditional. Just a good knowledge of how the puppets work, and some of these puppets are really complex. Like a lot of this stems from, and I think I actually said this in the Discord I think a year ago. The guys, because everybody seems to know Wildcrats now. A lot of the same guys that worked on Final Space started up at the Wildcrat studio, and a lot of these rigs, these puppet builds, are based on the ideas and the tech that we started with Kratz. So they've evolved from that so much, and there's so many different things you can do to make them turn around nicely, to make their clothing adjust, and do things that you couldn't do before. And the tech itself, like Harmony itself, has what's called deformers, which allow you to actually warp some of the drawings as well. And you can use all of that to your advantage. You can actually get a puppet to do a lot more than you normally would. And though it may or may not be quicker, it keeps things on model well. So when I say on model, if you guys probably already know, but you know, two people drawing Gary, one might have too big a forehead or too low a hair, and traditionally that's always an issue. You have to make sure that all your drawings are on model. And with a rig, it typically is a little bit easier, and some people might, you know, argue me on that one. I haven't been animating for a long time, but I believe that is one of the benefits with a puppeted system. So yeah, they will rarely go out and hand draw stuff, also because it tends to, for a lot of people that have been puppeting for so long, going and drawing a character that you haven't drawn day to day anymore will take longer. So yeah, that's usually where effects will step in, and we will do stuff that does need to be hand drawn. Ash's hair, anytime she floats up and her hair does that thing where it kind of just hovers and kind of flips out, effects actually went in and built those cycles and provided them for animation to kind of put in with it. And what else? Yeah, pretty much that, or any of the like weird gory stuff where something breaks off. Or that's what I was gonna do. Let me see. When in episode 3, where Clarence gets his fingers blown off and they have to grow back. That was one of my favorite things I did. One of these tiny little things. Just hand drawing the like bones growing up, and then the muscle, and then the skin. I believe that's the other shot I grabbed. But yeah, for whom asked that question, yeah, it's Final Space is all puppeted character animation, and then yeah, effects' specialty is going in and frame by frame drawing what else needs to be done.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. Please go one at a time. If you're not comfortable asking your own question, just post it in the showcase text and we will ask it for you. User Candy asks, who did the Quinn jump scare?
Quinn jump scare? That doesn't sound familiar. What? Anybody remind me of that one?
I assume it was the episode where Gary like drank the weird space water and had that weird Quinn hallucination.
It just hit me. Yeah. When I mean, that was a combo, of course. That was my team did all the stuff coming out of their face, and yeah, one of the animators, well, they're all good, but one of the animators did obviously the Quinn part. So that was obviously a double effort. Sometimes we'll do things if the faces or the characters really need to be distorted, and this is a good example when it comes up, is sometimes we'll actually, in a weird sense, we'll like hide or erase portions of the character and then draw over. So it wasn't in that case. That was, like I said, all the streams of I forget what it was. It wasn't really Invictus, or was it Invictus? But yeah, that jump scare bit. We would do the streams, all the ethereal stuff, and then the character itself would be puppeted animation. But yeah, say that was a case where we needed to change her, erase her face a bit, and we would go in, effects would go in and actually just paint over top of it as if it was actually a like a flattened piece of artwork.
I actually have a question for you. Who is your favorite character?
Oh, Ash. Absolutely.
Ash? Yes.
Ash, Ash is very close to me. There's a couple of reasons for it. A lot of reasons. Ash, I spent an enormous amount of time. With season 2, we had quite a bit of a lead up for effects. We started a couple months ahead of time, which is very rare. And one of the first things I tasked myself with was trying to figure out how that aura around her looks. And it's one of those things where, as I explained earlier, we're on such a tight timeline. We're always trying to find ways to do things smarter. And I tried to have a particle system that looked like oil. We were really trying to think of some smart ways to do it, and we couldn't really think of anything. So it really came down to me deciding, like making the hard decision that the effects team from now on would be doing that aura floating up around her, hand drawn for every shot. And we had built a cycle to kind of simplify it so that if she's just hovering, that just constantly moves. But yeah, I really liked her, and that was my chance to kind of one of the few times to actually come up with something mostly on my own that stuck with the character. So that kind of tied me to her quite a bit. And honestly, I'm a huge Ashley Birch fan, so that made it extra cool. And it's interesting because, of course, it wasn't Ashley Birch at first. When we got it, it was the voice actress that plays Sadie from Steven Universe. And then after, I think, a couple episodes, they recast her, and they recast Cheryl as two new voice actresses. And I don't know what the reason is for it. But Ashley Birch stepped in and sounds exactly like the original. So good on her. I always get stuck. My favorite things are always these things that people see for like 2 seconds and then never see again. And I'm like, nobody's going to notice the detail. And I'll show you how much detail is in this once this starts to actually react to me. So, I mean, I went in and you can see, hopefully you can see like the amount. Okay, stop zooming. But yeah, I went in, and you're not going to see this stuff normally, but I just made sure that we got the bone, a little bit of detail on the bone, the muscle just intertwining each little strand. I mean, they're individual frames. This is like, what did you call it? It's almost like Easter egg style stuff for anybody who was to actually get a hold of it and look through it. But yeah, I went ham, as the kids would say. Ham on it. Just really took my time. Because it was a chance to do something super fun. But yeah, I took a bit of time on that. But yeah, I'll show you with this one. If I can find, this will react to me enough. Let's see if I can show you guys just this, because it'll speed it up a little bit. So yeah, so you can see the stuff I did is just that. Fingers. Okay. I want to show you.
God, that is so cool.
That's really
So yeah, so thank you. It's I love this stuff. I don't know, it's really grown on me. I love drawing the like really fleshy stuff. It can be quite a bit of fun.
Felt that.
So let's see. And I mean that's the nice thing with animation in general. It's like you end up doing a lot of work, and you don't want to get stuck in the point where you think you're too good for anything. You want to do work that put your all into any kind of work. So if you're doing toddler shows like Max and Ruby, or you're doing stuff like Final Space, you want to always put your best work in, but there's a special, magic that comes out when you're doing something that you really feel towards, because, you want to put extra into it, and you've got so much passion for it. But yeah, so if I can... Oh, I really split these up. I don't know why I split these up so much. So, I don't know if you can see this. I could have just done this as one drawing, but I guess I just went and drew this as many drawings. I guess I must have too much time on my hands. His blast. It's actually not too bad. Some of the things that aren't on screen for a very long time are very fast action. They're the easier ones to do because you don't have to worry about, it's the slow movements that are really tough, because you can see when they're off. All your lines have to be drawn really close to each other from frame to frame, and they'll jitter otherwise. The Mooncake Blast is a very easy one because it's very fast and it happens very quick. It's also very easy because I think we did it originally about once. It wasn't even us. It was done in season 1, like by the Ottawa team. And then we just used it over and over and over again. Like, it fits every single time. But this season we actually got ahead of ourselves and made, I think, like 6 or 7 different views. So you got like a front on coming like really big, and then we got like thin far distance one going different distances. So we kind of got all our bases covered. But yeah, it's a fairly quick one to do. So it's like a, maybe a 25 out of 100 in terms of difficulty. I mean, the concept is difficult because it requires, you really want something that looks good, and it's got a little nice mix of electricity and plasma and all that stuff. But the process is very simple.
Okay, we have another question from Loveland, and she asks, was the flashback scene in episode 3 from season 2, was it originally in color?
Was it? Portions of it was. I can't remember. Man, my memory's not that good. I think it was in color. A lot of stuff we'll do, we don't always know until later if it's going to be black and white or color. And in a case like that, I'm pretty sure I remember it being in color, and then I don't even remember if it was us or ShadowMachine out in LA that did that adjustment later, because with Final Space, one of the interesting things about the process is, typically for us, with a lot of shows, we'll do them start to finish, and then we'll give them to the client, and the client will, just kind of walk away with it. And with ShadowMachine, which is our client, who is also, and TBS is their client, and Adult Swim is their client. So, Ola Rogers hired ShadowMachine, ShadowMachine hired us, which sounds complicated, but basically ShadowMachine does the important starter stuff. So they do the boards and character designs, and obviously you guys know Devo, and Devo does all the designs and stuff, and they send it to us, and they go this is how it should look. And then we do all the bulk of the work, and then we send it back to them. And ShadowMachine employs a handful of animators and compositors and editors, and then they decide if they change their mind on certain things, they'll fix it. So they won't come back to us and go, look, we know you don't have any time, but we changed our mind, and we want this to be black and white, or we want this to, this character to do something different. They'll just do it themselves, which is fantastic. It's one of the nicest things a client can do, and they've got the skill to do it. So in a case like that, it very well might have been something that happened after the fact, once we sent it to ShadowMachine, and they take all our files and they just, go nuts on them. Episode 1 is a very interesting one, because, and I wonder if they put the full version on the Blu-ray, because they cut it down. They don't normally, but they cut maybe 5 minutes out of that episode that we did, because they decided, and it was probably TBS's call, to do a recap on the first season. And so they had to cut down a ton of time. And I have, obviously, the original version of episode 1, but they edited it quite heavily. Good, awesome.
Do it.
It's good to hear a new voice. Hi.
So I was just wondering, what was your favorite scene to work on?
I mean, Space Baby's special to me. If we all know Space Baby, that was a really trippy shot, and there was more to it, and I wanted to do more, but when I saw that long ahead of time, I just had this, I ran to my animation director, and I'm like, okay, you and me, we're going to sit down, because when we first got it, not to put anything bad on ShadowMachine, but sometimes the animatics or the Leicas come in, and they're rushing to get ideas into these drawings, and they're not always clear. And this was a weird one, and we were like, wait, I don't know what's going on here. We have to figure this out. And ShadowMachine's also very good in that they are like, we trust that you're going to make this cool. So we have a lot of artistic liberty. And so when I saw that shot, I'm like, this is messy, but we're going to do this. I'm going to do this. So I actually took it upon myself after hours to sit down and work on it for like a few weeks ahead of time. And that was kind of my baby for a bit. Outside of that, I mean, that last episode had some really, really good stuff. I mean, God, it had a lot of really fun stuff to work on. There was a bit where Ash overpowers her aura and it gets like really dramatic, and I made sure I took that because I started Ash's aura and I wanted to finish it, so I wanted to have that look. But yeah, that's a good question.
Thank you so much for answering.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Would you like us to ask that, Mord, or do you want to ask it?
I can ask it.
Cool.
Hi. My question is, do you find more in your opinion, do you find more comfortable to work in your home or in the studio?
I'm much more comfortable in the studio. This has been a bit rough on me. I do like my home setup. It's nice. I got my books for reference. Make food whenever I want, all that stuff. I got big bright windows. Well, not right now, obviously, but I'm one of these people that I don't focus as well. My mind's everywhere. I'm working on not a proper desk. My computer's a little bit more outdated than my work stuff. I like the bike into work, do my work, and go home. And it also helps because honestly, I was working late nights on season 2, but this season with nothing to stop me, I can just work till midnight or 1 or 2, and it's like, it's not good for you. So the studio, I'm much more of a, I'll go in, and I'm very social. I'd much rather go in and see people, although, now probably wouldn't be seeing anybody if I went in, but yeah, I do like studio more.
All right, thank you very much.
No problem. But yeah, in between questions, just to show you, this is kind of a good example of what I was talking about before. So this little bit I drew, this is all I got. So the animators would have given me, that's it. So hand's not really doing anything. Pops on. So that's a case where I went in and I drew a whole bunch of artwork, and I have a system that can actually, so just drew the artwork right over top where that hand is, and you can even see, you're not really going to see it, but it's not, I guess I got a little messy. It's not entirely perfect. You can see they don't line up perfectly, but yeah, just taking the character puppet and going in and just drawing. I don't even know why I did this in so many pieces. Now, for a sense of speed, I would have done this all as, one drawing. I don't know why I did it all individually. I guess it was just being a bit of a go-hard, just trying to make it as clean as possible. I guess because it was 3rd episode, and I guess I thought I had the time. So, whatever. By the end of it, we didn't have time to, oh god, it was busy. The show is a very complicated show. It's a lot of stuff going on. It needs a lot of people. For sure. Yeah. Just thinking back for season 2, just some of the late nights we had, 'cause There was a lot of late nights getting this done. And a lot of it was just like, probably could have got it done quicker and it wouldn't have had the feeling that it had, but it was a lot of people just staying and really just putting in the hours to make it look that much extra. So and everybody wanted to put in that extra, which was really interesting because I've worked on a lot of shows and each representative, each supervisor from each department will quite often find a way to make their life easier. So somebody will be like, well, because sometimes there's things that multiple departments can do. So, you know, if we did, say, a flag flapping in the wind, and animation could probably find a way to do it. Effects obviously could do it. And props could probably design one that could be animated as well, and they could do it. And so sometimes it's like, well, we're too busy, let props do it. Or we're too busy, let animation do it. But in Final Space, everybody's like, oh, I'll do it. We got the time, we'll do it. We'll make it look good. And another department will be like, no, we'll do it. And it's like everybody's fighting over getting the chance to do the work, and it's much more positive than it not. So it's fun. Oh, pizza.
Didn't you ask this
Well,
on Owen and Cody?
Yeah, I mean, I had pizza tonight. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear. I could eat pizza every day. I love it. There's so much things you can do with it. I mean, that's a good way to keep things spicy. I mean, keep things interesting. Yeah. No, I could eat pizza all the time. I mean, there's so many things you can do with pizza. It's just perfect.
Pizza's
It really
very
is the perfect food.
versatile.
Yeah. I like a lot of different things. I'm typically like a mushroom, pepperoni kind of thing. I'm one of those people that I never understood why nobody likes pineapple, and I'm a pineapple guy. I really do like pineapple on pizza. I don't get it. Like, it's nice. I know some people don't like the sweet and savory thing, but it's good. It's refreshing. It's a nice little addition to the pizza.
Pulling pizza isn't bad.
I mean, there are other things I'm sure that it would be weird. There's certain things I don't like. Like, I don't like green pepper because I find it waters it down a little bit. It's really weird.
I don't like spicy stuff on my pizza.
Oh, I love spice. I grew up with a lot of spice, and me and my girlfriend, we'd spicy stuff like crazy. So we'd make it spicy.
Hey, sure, fine. I'll ask this one. What are some of the pieces? What are some of the pieces of work you're most proud of, man?
You know what I'm proud of.
Yes, I do know, but the chat might not.
Are we talking Final Space specific or in general?
Ooh, I was thinking Final Space specific, but let's go general.
I mean, Final Space is my favorite. I mean, for sure. In terms of stuff I'm proud of. Yeah. I mean, man, I forget. So I've got that thing going on, though. Like, I hate anything I've done 10 seconds after I've submitted. Final Space is one of the few things where I'm happy with some of the stuff I've seen on screen, and some of it has a real big impact. And I think part of that's the comp kind of cleans things up to the point where it doesn't look like the stuff I did, I guess, in a weird sense.
Absolutely bless comp.
Yeah, but man, I designed in season 1. ShadowMachine apparently wasn't very happy with the laser blasts that we did, and from what I know when I talked to Ottawa, was that they didn't think that there was going to be very much laser paddles in Final Space. Like, ShadowMachine was really quiet about where that series was going. They didn't know that the end of it was going to be an insane space battle. So I had a lot more going into it because my buddy was the effects supervisor in season 1, and I had a lot of chats with him about what season 2 needed, and he was saying, one of the things I really wanted was laser blasts that were nicer. So I went in and I very specifically made a laser blast for each character. Different guns had to have different blasts. I wanted to make sure there was variety, different colors. I wanted that, like, almost G.I. Joe thing. So, like, enemies have different colors than the good guys do. I wanted to have, if they were going to have a fight like the stuff on the Happy ship, I wanted to make sure that there was, like, purple lasers going and yellow lasers going, and you could kind of see what was going on, and it wasn't just a mess. And I really like. They're the simplest thing, but I really did like how a lot of the laser blasts turned out. The like rifle that Hugh uses like once. I really like the blast I did on that, even though it's like the simplest amount of work. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. No, I was letting the chat do their typing. We get to talk all the time, right?
Yeah, it's true. Though some of the stuff I'm most proud of is going to show up this season for sure. I had a lot of fun.
Oh my gosh!
And nothing we can talk about yet.
Just you guys wait.
Yeah. Oh god.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited.
There's some. Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, because it's tough because like we get to see the episodes way ahead of time in like a different state, and we're like, oh, like we've got to wait through the whole thing. We got to wait until it's done. We get to see each process. We got to wait to see what ShadowMachine does with it afterwards because it looks even nicer then. And just and bad part for us sometimes is that sometimes ShadowMachine sends us stuff out of order because of how they had to work on it. So like we got last season. We got 2 episodes in a separate order. I think it was episode 10 and 9. We got 10 before 9. So, or 9 before 10. One of the ones, basically, we jumped to an episode that we get from Olin and ShadowMachine, and Fox has been knocked out unconscious, and he's in that cryo chamber, that stasis chamber. And I'm like, well, what happened? Like, that's not fair. You can't do that to us. So, yeah, it's like, that sucks. Like, at least you guys will be able to binge it in one run. We gotta really take it slow.
Has there ever been a mistake, like probably an animation mistake, that made it all the way through without being caught? Is that the question?
You guys caught that.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
Because we had that bit on, I forget what episode, where Gary had the metal arm, 2 metal arms or something like that. And it was really wonky. And somebody pointed that out. And we were like, no, there's no way. And we dug through our files.
I remember that.
And we looked and we're like, there's no way we did it. And we looked and I found the original shot. I'm like, it was us. We made a mistake. And it was like, maybe for a couple frames, it was a weird turnaround and the symbols shifted and we all missed it. And there's a lot of levels of people that will check that stuff. And I'm really surprised. We thought maybe it happened on ShadowMachine's end because, we have a lot of people looking at stuff, but made it through. I've had stuff, mess up on other shows that were my mistakes, but not a lot of stuff. I mean, there's always things that slip through, and it's like, if anybody's been in theater or did that in high school, that whole, you're always taught that, like, nobody else knows the script except for yourself, and obviously the people in the play. And if you make a mistake, you just go with it. Because nobody else knows that you made that mistake because they don't have the script in front of them. So sometimes it's like that. It's like, I've made mistakes, or actually I think I posted this one on Twitter. There was a bit, where during the dance battle in the happy place for Gary, and he does that wink, and it's a little pink or purple sparkle. And I had intended for my team to animate that and have more of a twinkle to it, but there was a placeholder. And I guess everybody saw the placeholder, assumed that we did the work, and just went on with it. And so, that way, that's a GIF on the internet now. And that was a mistake. So, it happens. Also, speaking of uwu speed, we got a Leica for this season, and somebody drew Bolo in the boards with not an uwu, but an OWO face, and I saved that because it's hilarious.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing!
So
someone would be very happy to hear that.
Yeah, they have fun.
What's your favorite video game?
Oh, that's a rabbit hole you don't want to go down.
Oh dear.
One of the things that you're going to learn today is all of these books, which goes on for forever, and you can't quite see them. The majority of those are video game art books. You can see the Pip-Boy. Like, this is just, who's not a video game nut, I guess. But with my age, I started a long time ago, like back when I was a kid with a Genesis and a 286 and stuff. So Commodore 64. So my favorite game, that's a big loaded question. But if I was to nail it down to one, it would be Grim Fandango. And I don't know who knows that game, but
I think I've heard of that one before.
I would highly recommend it for anybody that loves games, I guess. I mean, that's a big question, not a non-file space question, but you're gonna really get me started, because I'm like back in the 90s when I just really loved adventure games. I really loved LucasArts. Like, LucasArts was just the pinnacle of gaming back then, and Tim Schafer, who I followed quite a bit, made Grim Fandango, which was just this adventure game set in this paper mache afterlife, basically in the Mexican Day of the Dead, or Mexican version of the afterlife, surrounding the Day of the Dead. And the writing's fantastic. It looks great. You can now get it. They did a remaster of it, and it's always on dirt cheap. I highly recommend it. So, yeah, I mean, that, and then the short list from there is Half-Life 2, Last of Us, Sonic,
Which Sonic game?
Specifically Sonic CD would be my absolute favorite. That's how specific I'm going to get.
That's a great one.
A fantastic soundtrack. It made a very good use of the system. The history behind how they actually got that game to work and the technical aspect of it is fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. And it goes. I can go for forever. I'm a huge horror fan. I love Silent Hill. There's a lot of games I'm sitting on because I keep physical copies that turn out they're worth a lot, but I didn't realize it. Like, I've got all the Silent Hill games. Well, it turns out they're very expensive to get now. Yeah, I'm a big racing game fan. I play a whole ton, since the original Gran Turismo, or way back before that. Yeah, it's big can of worms you open. So, yeah, I'll stop there.
How many effects would you say there are in an episode, and how do you split them up between the crew?
That's a cool question. It's a good question. It varies from episode to episode. But File Space is one of those shows where per 22-minute episode there might be upwards of 200 effects, maybe. And this season is a little bit different than last season. Last season, it was very easy because we're all in studio together, and I would split them up in a combination of being even because you wanted everybody to have the same workload. It wouldn't be nice to cater to somebody else, but you also wanted to kind of cater to their strengths. And there were some people that were really fantastic at. I had one girl that was really good at Ash's aura, and she'd always ask for it. I'd be like, absolutely. If you like it, I'm going to give you all the Ash's aura shots. Somebody would be really good at fire, and always give her a fire. One girl, was a real powerhouse at any of the difficult stuff, or any of the things that would be harder to describe how they needed to look. And we were kind of had a really good repertoire between me being able to explain something and her getting it, without me having to go and actually draw too much of it. She'd take all that stuff on. And, I've got one guy that would take a lot of the really heavy stuff, a lot of the explosions. There's a bit where I had him spend a week on a shot. I was like, you make this look perfect. And it was another case of nobody's going to notice this, but there's a bit in, I think, one of the very last episodes where the Triborg takes the resistance ship and light folds right into the Happy space station. And that is a complicated shot because there's waterfalls going on, there's guys running around, there's a lot of depth to it, and it's coming at you, so it's coming at the screen, it's breaking through all these waterfalls and bridges and the ground, and you've got to draw that all. You've got to draw everything crumbling, everything it plowing to the ground and it lifting up, and I let him spend days on that. So it was and it was worth it. But looking back, it goes by in about 2 seconds. Nobody sees it. But, I made, times like that, I'll split it up and I'll be like, okay, I know you can do this. You make it look good. But yeah, it's usually playing to the strengths and weaknesses, for sure.
I am never going to look at these scenes the same again.
And I mean, that's the fun thing. I mean, with a lot of animation and TV and filmmaking and stuff, is that once you get really into it, like especially when you start doing it, you can't ignore certain things, and you're like, oh, yeah, now it's all you see. So yeah, but yeah, cool question. I like it.
Thank you for answering. I guess.
Yeah.
Wait.
You're welcome.
I have another question.
Shoot.
I was wondering if you consider it easy or hard to apply to like work on the show, because before the show ends, I would like to work on it myself.
It's hard because it's usually in a case like this, it's not easy to jump onto something that's already rolling. Unless we lose a crew member, usually you're not going to be able to gain a crew member, and I've done it in the past. Sometimes you can freelance a little bit, but it requires, usually the budget's already set. So the trouble is that getting in when the budget's already been spent, technically there's almost no budget to bring in anybody else, so they almost always have to come up with other solutions, because there have been times when I've been like, okay, well, we need an extra effects person for the rest of the show, and it's like, no, budget's already been spent. You can't, even if you've got somebody in mind, you can't do it. So that's really the harder part. Getting in on a show, technically, once it's already rolling as well, the trouble is of course, people get trained and they ramp up, and you get a chance to kind of get rolling. And unless you're already quite skilled and very good at just jumping on a show and picking up the style very quickly and pumping out work, that's the other difficulty with that. But that's talking about this season as well. If you're talking about like the show while it's still running, because I know the rumor has always been that Olin Rogers has this as a 5-season arc or something like that. There's lots of time for that to happen. Well, where are you based? Are you in the US or are you in Canada, or?
I'm in New York.
Well, there you go. It is tough because New York, at least we're in the same time zone. But the way Canada works, and this is partly why, sorry if I'm not really answering your question properly, just these are things to consider. The way Canada works and why US uses Canada for a lot of this production work is that the government, the Canadian government and the Ontario government gives tax breaks to studios, because it's a big part of the Canadian industry is producing TV and film. And the US has historically always filmed in Canada, used filming services or effects services or animation services. And so part of that requirement is that you have to be a resident of Ontario, or if you're working out of Halifax, resident of Halifax, or if you're working out of BC, basically you have to be Canadian. So they typically won't hire unless you are. In terms of the difficulty of the show, I know a few people that have started as their first job, but Final Space is difficult enough that a lot of the people aren't juniors. They're not straight out of school. They're almost always 3 or 4 years experience in order to, tackle it. But I don't know who that is. Somebody's TV screaming in the background, and it's not mine. But yeah, in terms of skill, like I've seen people some people are just really good. I mean, it also depends on what department you're working in. Like me personally, like I'm willing to take effects people that are very, very new if I know that they can do the job, But effects, I think, is a slightly different ball game than animation or some of the other ones where I've never supervised in that. I don't know really what the take is on that. Where effects, I actually teach at a college level, and I have that feel for, like, if I'm not quite sure that you might be able to do it right away, I can get you up to speed if I know that you kind of have that underlying skill. So yeah, it's a mixed game. And if you've seen, like, there is quite a gap between seasons, and it takes a long time to produce seasons. So if you're getting into animation, or you're looking to do in the future. There's a bit of time before season 5 starts, I would say.
I've been silent this whole time, but I've just been listening so intently.
I hope that kind of answers. I hate to I don't want to be like a wet blanket or anything. I want to say oh, you'll never, it's impossible. The technical hurdles, of course, are, like I said, from our aspect is being in, Canada. If you wanted to work at ShadowMachine's end, I have no idea if they would take remote. But I don't know what it's like to move to LA either. So that's a whole different story. But of course, that's the other end to work on things for Final Space would be either ShadowMachine in LA or Toronto, in Canada.
I'm sorry. This is just all so interesting to me. I love learning anything I can about the animation industry because I've wanted to get into it my entire life.
Yeah, I think, if I'm not wrong, and me and Josh were discussing this the other day, Titmouse has a New York studio as well. And New York, I think, has a handful of animation studios. They've got 987, which I don't think is called 987 anymore. They've got a lot of recording studios, and they've got a little bit of an industry down there as well. Animation's, it's a fantastic place to be if you can coexist in that kind of environment, that studio environment, because it is a very team system, and you have to be able to work with that, and it's tough because I know I had a friend who was an editor for Alliance Atlantis, and before I got into the industry, he told me he got out of it because you're never doing your own thing. You're always working on somebody else's project, which, I can see it from that aspect, and some people that doesn't jive well with them. And, for me, that's kind of one of the really nice things about animating, at least animating in a studio, is that, you're working with a team of people and everybody's got ideas to bring to the table, and it's a big collaboration. And, but you have to, of course, set your ego aside to a certain degree because, unless you're even if you're a supervisor, you're always answering to somebody else who's more in charge of what you're doing. So even I'm answering to my animation directors to a certain degree, and we're all answering to ShadowMachine, who to a certain degree is answering to Olin Rogers, who's answering to TBS. So it's a trickle down. You got to make sure that you're willing to take ego aside and you may do something great, but you got to be able to be ready to just delete it and put it on your demo reel and, do the work that's asked of you.
Absolutely. It just makes me so excited. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. You're welcome.
Would you give any advice for beginner animators who wants to start in animation? If you could give any advice for it?
For starting, it's if you want to get it's animation like any art. It's really all about practice, right? And studying other people's works and breaking it down and kind of figuring out what timing works and stuff like that. It's a lot of my advice is always specifically for effects because that's really my forte. And I never want to be start with a good college because they're not all great and not everybody pulls the same from them, and you can learn a lot. But I'm used to where I teach in Toronto. One of the nice things is that a large portion of the people that teach there also work in the industry, and that's a huge thing because when I went to college because I actually went to college for 3D animation and never actually used it, but so many of the instructors there were so out of touch that everything they told me was out of date and no longer applied. And I made a demo reel and practically got laughed at because they were like, you can't do this. We can't look at this. This is no good. You've got all these things you shouldn't put in it. And I'm like, oops. And then I had to rethink it. But yeah, it's a lot of it's practice. It's we have so much of an opportunity now in where we are with sound like an old man, the internet and social media and stuff, to interact with people that are in the industry, and that's huge. Like it's about asking questions and really practicing and playing around. I know a lot of people, myself included, that self-taught majority of the animation, and just went from there. And nobody, I don't think anybody looks, at least not in any of the hiring that I've done or anybody that I know of has done, looks at what college you went to or whether or not you even graduated. They're just looking at your demo reel, which is just that 1 or 2 minute clip that you put together of your work, and it shows what you're capable of. And at least where we are, a lot of the things are as well, is that we have tests for you as well. So your skill level, not only are you showing it in your demo reel, but whether or not you went to a prestigious school or did really well. I mean, nobody cares, but if you complete your test well, it shows that you're capable. And then from there on, it just becomes a lot of word of mouth and just getting to know everybody. So social media means now that you don't have to go locally to events and get-togethers like we used to and get to know people in the industry. You can just really just hang on. The Discord's great, or a lot of people on Twitter that are showing their work, and like I'm learning constantly from people all around the world that are effects artists or traditional artists, and just watching their process. People are doing Twitch streams of their work and just watching how they work. Like that's a great learning thing. So it's practice, really, all of it.
Okay, so my question is, can you confirm us or deny the existence of an upcoming beach episode of Final Space?
A beach episode?
Every anime
I
has
wish.
a beach episode.
Oh, I wish.
I think this season's too sad, too heartbreaking for a beach episode. I mean, if there was, I certainly couldn't say. I don't think, but I probably pretty safe to say that I haven't seen one yet. But we've received just over half the episodes so far, so maybe.
Has anyone bothered to ask Olin if Ventrexians even like water?
Well, that's a good point. So.
Yeah.
They would probably just sunbathe. That's what they would do.
I don't know whoever did that fan art of Gary licking, was it Gary licking avocado or avocado licking Gary?
Oh yeah.
Just be like, that's how we bath, and I'm like, oh, I love it. It's hilarious. So yeah.
I love that piece. It's a classic.
That's literally.
But yeah, cats don't like water, so.
Yeah.
Oh, but on a slightly related but slightly not related note, I guess the animation team was going over. I can't remember why, but it's just happening beside me. That little noise that little Kato makes when that little when he sees Ash, and we didn't. That was added after, and somebody posted it once on Twitter or something, and I was like, I assumed that somebody added it as a joke, but no, that wasn't in it when we saw it.
Yeah, it
was out of left field for us.
That was in the episode.
It was good. It's been too long. The biggest example is, or the most that was cut was in episode 1, and it's been so long. I have to sit down and compare the 2 episodes. I think they shortened a lot of the beginning on that, or maybe some of the race. I can't remember. I don't remember any specific effects I spent a long time on the cut. I can say that it mustn't have been anything big because usually that sticks with me. I worked on the Green Eggs and Ham miniseries, and I spent a week doing this train smoke when the train enters the tunnel, going left to right, enters the tunnel, and the smoke has to puff up, but then kind of get cut off there. And I spent a god-awful amount of time on that. And then Warner Brothers cut the smoke out. They cut just my effect out, and I don't know why, because it was good. And I don't normally speak that highly of my work that I would be like, well, maybe they didn't like it. but I thought that was well done, and they just straight up took it out. So it wasn't even just the whole shot; it was just my. Well, Green Eggs and Ham, it was interesting because it was done as close to traditionally as possible. So Final Space, as you can see when we do it, when I do the work, I'll do it traditionally, but I'll also go in and I'll add all the color and all the clean line, and I might start with rough, but it's polished by the end of it. Now, traditionally, you do stuff with just line, and then you send it to another studio that does the color, and that's the way Green Eggs and Ham worked. So I did the smoke as outline. The outline had to be very accurate so that another artist could go in at another studio and fill it in with that color. And if they took the ink dropper thing and with an ink bucket or paint bucket, and they filled that, if it didn't fill because there was a gap, it'd come back to me, or it wouldn't come back to me, but I guess they'd get mad or something like that. I can't remember. And I'd have to go in as well and mark out the shadows and the highlights. So for all I know, it hit the color department there and they didn't want to do it and just deleted it. I don't know. Or maybe they messed it up and Warner Brothers took it out. Final Space, I can't remember anything specific. I know that they did cut a bunch of stuff in episode 1 and a little bit in 2 and not so much past that. But I know there's some stuff that they added for sure. The scene in episode 4 where Ash is really building up power off the what's wrong with me? The Lighthearted engines or whatever. And we did that, but ShadowMachine added even more to it. They added even more to that effect and made it even nicer. So I remember we were struggling with that because we just didn't have very much time. And here or there they add a little effect or two. But I remember they were very nice. A couple of them contacted me and just to say they were so happy with the work that we did. And it's so rare to get that kind of acknowledgement from anybody, no less the client. So yeah.
Hi, let's just make sure I don't crash this time. Okay, we're good. So okay, you keep on saying how you spend days or weeks on a specific effect, but I feel like I remember you saying earlier that each episode has a minimum of 2 weeks or something for you guys to work on the effects. So how do you manage your time between the really difficult ones and the smaller ones? Because I can't time manage at all.
It's tough, and that's part of working with a big team is that I'll do it if we can afford the time. So I can't always get away with that. It'll be either me working late nights, putting in extra hours to put into that shot. So, or trying to be more economical with other shots. So sometimes we'll get stuff got what we call beauty shots. So they're shots that really are worth the effort because they're going to wow you, and other shots where you might not really notice it as much. So sometimes I'll spend a lot more time on that and then cram the other shots out, which is unfortunate, but if you don't notice the difference in the other shots as much, that'll help. But also, quite often, as the supervisor, I don't have as big of a workload for actually doing a lot of the shots. What I'll do a lot in season 2 is I'll get the shots started for people and then pass them on. So I wasn't doing a lot of my own work. I was doing a lot of partly completed work or key drawings for them to finish, or depending on how busy it was, I was just hammering out a bunch of shots as well. But yeah, that would be a case if it was something that really needed a lot of time, I would just either redistribute it so that everybody else had maybe a few more shots. Like in the example where I said I had that one guy work on it for a week. It just happened to work out that everybody could handle their workload, and I was able to give him less work. So it's really just balance, and it can be tough, but managing your time is a huge thing in animation when you're working in a team, because you'll get your shots and you can't not get them done. If you don't get them done, that's it. That is the number one thing in an animation studio is you gotta get your work done one way or another, right? If it doesn't, we gotta just deliver our stuff to the client. Other departments need to get it. Yeah, it's just gotta happen. So if you're not already good at time management, you'll learn, I suppose. You'll either learn or fail. So
Yeah.
and it's a balance. It's tough because some people are really, really good and they really want to put out really good work, but it's kind of sometimes about cutting back. Like, I'm always doing stuff where I'm like, I put too much work into this, and it may look really good, but now I don't have any time. So, and that shot that I spent, that I was saying I spent 3 days, like 14 hours a day doing, that was for me. Like, I was having fun, but maybe I shouldn't have spent that much time on it. So, and I've had a producer to yell at me once I took on a show that I worked on like 6 years ago or something. It was a tent, like a carnival tent collapsing. And it was just a really simple background element, and the animator kind of did it, and it didn't look very good. So I spent a week drawing this tent, which is a lot of detail. It's a big piece, this carnival tent collapsing as the pieces splintered and broke, and all the cloth fall, and it's got a lot of detail in it. And when I told my producer that I took a week doing it because I had the time, she wasn't very happy. So, who actually turns out to be the same producer that's working on Final Space season 3 now. So,
Oh, that's cool.
funny enough, kind of full circle again. The industry is very small. It's you bump into a lot of the same people, and the talent circulates quite a bit because quite often you're not staying at one studio for life. You're going from show to show, or project to project, or contract to contract, and so you leave school, everybody kind of gets their jobs, and then people move around, and like right now I got a bunch of people on my team that I started working with 4 years ago, and we're all back together again. So yeah.
Nice. Okay, thanks for answering again.
No problem. Oh, for Nunchucks. I don't know if anybody's seen that show. 2 seasons. But
and for one shot, it was a work of art.
I did so much fun stuff on that show, the show that nobody saw. It was actually a Jamfilled show originally, and the other studio I worked in that was tied together with Jamfilled for a lot of projects. We ended up pretty much taking it from them, and I think there's some bad blood about that, but that was a show that me and one of the other guys that's working on Final Space right now, the two of us worked. Oh no, Humphrey didn't work on that. We worked on Camp Lake Bottom. Yeah, Nunchucks was pretty much just me the whole time, doing a lot of work constantly. Yeah, but I had fun. There were a lot of weird rules on that show, though, for not being too violent, but also very violent. Kid shows are weird, so yeah.
Okay. No, not that violent.
Even Final Space is like that. Final Space is there's a lot of things that we kind of had to pull back on based on what TBS told us, and even Devo will say it's really hard to gauge what they want and what they don't want. And there are times when I'll do something and I'll be like, a lot of it's just blood. They really just don't want to see blood, and yet you've seen some of the shots. There's a lot of blood, so. Where those choices
saying Gary losing his arm was even worse?
Yeah, I don't get that. That was an incredible amount of blood, and then
that was a ton of blood.
Yeah, and they won't always let us do that, though. So
I think we have a question. Miss ECP is asking another one. Okay, what is the delineation/separation between ShadowMachine's work and Jamfilled's work?
It's pretty clear. It's changed a bunch since season 1 was a lot more ShadowMachine stuff. So ShadowMachine will start at the front end, and they'll do scripts, they'll do character designs, they'll do the basic locations, so the design for locations, and they'll do what's called the Leica. So they'll do the storyboards, and then they'll time them out to audio and stuff, and they'll send it to us. So we get a whole package, and the package includes sometimes a handful of effects designs. So if Devin wants us to, something to look particular, he'll send me some designs, but very little effects designs at this point. And, the characters and stuff. And then we kind of take it from there. So we've got layout and BG, which will do all the locations and all the backgrounds. We've got characters and props and builds, so they will take the character designs and we'll build them into the puppets. We'll do the props as turnarounds and stuff like that as well. And obviously effects as well. And we'll do compositing, so we'll do all the lighting and color changes and the soft glows and the blurs and all the really nice stuff. And sometimes a lot of little particle things like these star streaks and whatever. And then take it pretty much complete. We'll send it back. Oh, and we also do 3D. So sometimes there's 3D ships like the Crimson Light. And in season 1, we didn't touch any of the 3D stuff. And part of it was because we didn't have the capacity to do it. And we didn't do any of the compositing. But now for season 2 and 3, we do all the compositing and we do all the 3D stuff. And we ship pretty much complete to ShadowMachine at this point. And ShadowMachine will throw a little bit extra flair on it. So sometimes we'll composite it and it looks really cool, and they'll just go that extra mile. And where we might not want to do it because it seems like too much, they'll be like, no, we can push it a little bit further. And they can take that risk because, it's their risk to take. So they'll blow stuff out more, make stuff brighter, makes the explosion that more intense or whatever. And because one of the things we have to worry about sometimes is seizure warnings. So when we do a lot of gunfire and flashes and a lot of stuff like that really flashes between colors, we have tests to do to make sure that doesn't happen, and we have to worry about that more than ShadowMachine. And ShadowMachine, they can take it, and if TBS says, this isn't safe to air, then they can dial it back a little bit and set it back. So they just take that little extra step.
Oh, all right.
Joe.
All right. Wait, all right. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, keeping on the subject of positive feedback and considering just how tight of a time crunch you guys have, what would you say is the best piece of advice that you've gotten from, say, from any other person working on the show, especially if it was from Olin, the guy, the head honcho?
For keeping on time, or
I mean in general,
in general.
Yeah, the best piece of advice you got in general whilst working on the show.
It's a good question. I'm trying to think of something that really hit. I mean, I chat with Olin a bunch, but usually it's just about other stuff. I know that when quarantine hit, we were chatting a little bit, and he was saying that best thing is just to take all this, lack of, I guess, I'm trying to think of his wording. I want to say turn lack of motivation into motivation, but just that stir craziness of being trapped inside, and he's like, just turn that into, drive to make something. And absolutely that's true. And I know that was true for him. But yeah, I hate to be that guy that says I didn't really get any really, good tidbits of advice on this show. I think I was giving a lot of the advice, honestly, to my team and a lot of the other people. And in a case like that, a lot of my advice was to my team to reference. And I know this is kind of a twist on what you're asking, but I know that you guys probably hear a lot, especially in North American stuff, just not going nuts on anime reference and stuff, but that's a thing that we really pushed for. And I think, maybe that's a bit that I learned from the old effects supervisor from season 1, who's a buddy of mine. And he said always pushing reference from anime. And so that was a big one for me. Is I've got a lot of good books, breakdown books, and we were watching a lot of stuff, and I was always telling my team, to look at a lot of late 90s, early 2000s anime for a lot of effects reference. And I think that show has a lot of that as well. And there's a lot of pull for that, especially for effects design, but just how it looks, I mean, that was a really good time for that. And so I've actually got a couple good, really nice effects books, Japanese effects books and stuff that see, some stuff like this that I was just really pushing on everybody to really make sure that we were all hitting a good style, and especially from a time where everybody wants to reference like North American stuff. Like, this show's got the kind of effects, the sci-fi effects you really want to pull from anime. Absolutely. So, maybe that's kind of a roundabout way to answer your.
Okay. It's kind of a question. Not sure if they have made it to you before, or it's the same they made to Alan and Cody, which is your favorite movies, which are?
My favorite
movies. Yeah.
Favorite movies?
Yeah, movies.
It's tough. I mean, favorite movies in general. I've been a fan for as long, like, since I saw it in the 90s. Blade Runner has always been a huge one for me. Ghost in the Shell is a huge one, especially for this show. Akira did a lot. I pulled from that for a lot. I mean, these are kind of show specific, but yeah, like, what else did I really, really dig? I mean, everybody loved. I mean, I'm always going to say Star Wars. Everybody loves Star Wars, But and Aliens, I pulled a lot from Aliens as well, like the Cameron one. But yeah, Ghost in the Shell, the original, like the '90s movie. I'm always drawn from that somewhere. And I was posting a bunch about. I watched the sequel, and I already found a parallel between the sequel film and Final Space. So I'm not the only one pulling inspiration from Ghost in the Shell.
Ooh.
So yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm a big sci-fi guy. When I was a kid, and I still do, I always really loved 80s horror so much. Me and my brother just used to watch so much 80s horror all the time. It was a different time, and they never were really able to duplicate that anymore. It's really good. Yeah, for sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, they don't do it anymore. I just really love, and I do really just love practical effects as well. I was really happy with the fourth Alien movie because, they mixed CG into it, but not Joss Whedon. He did the script, but the French director that did the movie made sure to employ a lot of practical effects in that, and a lot of the sets used a lot of miniatures. It was very little CG in a time when everybody was using CG. So yeah, it was really nice to see that. Yeah, practical effects are great. And I really love old sci-fi when they did the old stop-mo all the time. The first and second RoboCop movie, I think especially the second RoboCop movie and Ed 102 and the other robot was all stop motion, and it's so jittery because it's on like 2s or 4s or something, and it doesn't blend well with the 24 frame a second footage, and so it looks really unnatural and creepy, and you just don't get that anymore. I miss horror when the monsters were stop motion. So an old time, showing my age.
Do you want to ask your own question, or do you want us to ask it?
When a situation starts to become difficult, how do you or your peers start to deal with it in a way that will become easier?
Technically difficult or emotionally difficult?
About both.
Oh, well, yeah, sure. I mean, technical difficulty, and we've had a lot of that, especially on this show. That's the benefit of having a huge crew with a lot of experience. And when I said before that, like, we don't hire a lot of juniors for the show, it's because it requires a lot of problem solving that has worked out because, man, we got just a smoking team. We had a lot of people that have been around for a long time and have solutions for things that we wouldn't think of. Our compositors can come up with some really good tricks. We've got some water that we were supposed to do in 3D or in 2D traditionally, like in an upcoming episode that we did 3D, and that was quite a feat. Little things like that, like there's it's really just putting our heads together and coming up with a solution. And we've always been able to come up with something. And ShadowMachine's always happy with us for that. So even if it's like they may show us something that, because quite often they'll show us something that's like, here's what we want you to do, and you're like, this isn't a feature film. We can't do that. That's impossible. But they're always happy what we're able to come up with because, we can usually come up with something that's a compromise that works out quite well. Emotionally, like if we're talking like stress on the crew, or if we're talking about the show itself is upsetting, it really could go a couple different ways. It really is just, honestly, it comes down to the same thing. It's in any case like that, it's being part of a team, right? Like it's a studio, and the entire Final Space team on our end is probably about 100 people, and somebody's got something they're good at, and almost always somebody has an answer for a problem, or a bunch of people get together and have an answer to a problem that they've worked together towards. And if it's because somebody's having a hard time, or if it's a technical thing, there's always a way around it, and it's usually about being cooperative and working as a team. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
It did. Thank you very much.
Great. Look at those.
Oh, it's likely worth it, especially for effects. You're going to see a lot of mistakes, or a lot of like golden stuff that you didn't know was there. And definitely with season 3. Well, certain key things. I think I'm going to hang on to my stuff more because a lot of clients, we get, they're very particular, and even though something's aired, they don't like us posting stuff. Warner Brothers is really bad for that. When everybody worked on Green Eggs and Ham, everybody started showing the process, and WB snapped back and got everybody with like takedown notices, even though it's been aired and it wasn't completed work. And so I haven't shown anything, but that's kind of like in the back of my mind all the time. So I didn't really show anything, and I showed that one bit on Twitter, and Olin was like, yeah, show more. And I'm like, oh, fine. Now I can't find anything. So
Olin is just like cool with almost everything.
Yeah, he's pretty much, if it's good with him, it's usually a good indicator because he runs a lot of that stuff. And although I think technically the NDAs are binding more to ShadowMachine and TBS, usually if he gives it the go ahead, you're usually pretty clean. So I'm going to hang on to some stuff for season 3 for sure to show the process and show some stuff. So because it's fun to look at separate. So yeah.
Yeah,
right.
cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, of course. It was good talking to y'all, and thanks for having me here. And yeah, I mean, if you guys have my Twitter handle or whatever, I think most of you guys know it. You guys can always hit me up with questions in the blue, whatever, I don't care. I like answering questions. And we never hit that 5,000, but I would be darn well surprised if he didn't do it anyway. So
we need to hit that 5,000. I need to see it.
I don't
for that cosplay.
We'll see. Let's hope it happens. Yeah, I like how Olin threw him under the bus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. But yeah, all right. I'll say goodbye. And everybody enjoy your night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for offering your time with us.